Good morning to all of you. Good morning to Brazilians and friends of South America that are here in this webinar. Also, good afternoon for our friends in South Africa. Good afternoon for our good friends in India. And good evening for our friends in China. I want to thank you, all of you. Our President Marcos Troijo, from our new development bank, Ambassador André Correa do Lago, our President of Invest India, Deepak Bagla, and also the President of Apex Brazil, our good friend also, Sergio Segovia. Important that we are making this webinar exactly during, and also to discuss after the pandemic situation that we are having, what are the ideas that all of you have? Our chamber exists since 2006 because mainly of our good friend, today Minister of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Mr. Hardipuri. He was ambassador in Brazil, and also Mr. Anand Sharma, Minister of Industry and Commerce at the time, insisted that the group that we had, Brazilians and Indians, since there was no Chamber of Commerce, we should help them to organize the visit of Prime Minister of India at that time. Anyhow, we are for these years now for good time having MOU with the most important associations in India, very important support from the government of India, the government of Brazil, the embassies of Brazil and India. And we've been developing many delegations up and down Brazil and India. But also one of the focus of this meeting is that recently we had a very important delegation in the beginning of this year with President Bolsonaro, where our foreign ministry and also our president of Apex and also our ambassador, André Correa do Lago in India, and some of us, we gave a very important support to have, I believe, the most important result of any delegation that ever since exists, this chamber and these chambers that exists. I think it was the most important agreements that we signed. Of course, some of these problems that we are having with the pandemic situation right now is delaying, but this is one of the things that we want to hear from all of you. How is the situation, how is going? And most of all, important that the chamber is also restarting again, since we cannot make delegations right now. We are restarting in a bigger way our webinars, our discussions. Here in Brazil already we did some, but also more international like we are doing right now. So I would like to give the floor or the word to our President of New Development Bank. It was a suggestion that we gave years ago, and finally through India and through South Africa and Russia in Africa, this became a reality and it was signed here in Brazil, the existence of the bank. I believe the bank is developing good work. Now we are very happy that we have a very, very good international friend, president of the bank, and I'm sure that he's going to give a very, very important development for these opportunities we have for the BRICS, but mainly in this case we're discussing. So I would like, first of all, to give the word to our president, Marcos Troijo of the New Development Bank. Marcos Troijo has been the Deputy Economy Minister for Foreign Trade and International Affairs in government of Brazil until recently. And he has been Director of BRIC Lab, Center on Global Economic Governance in Columbia University and School of International and Public Affairs during 7 years and 9 months. As a postdoctorate in Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs, he's a PhD in Sociology of International Relations, University of São Paulo, Master of Science Sociology of International Relations in Rio Branco Institute, president of the new Development Bank. Marcos, the word is with you, the floor is with you, and important that you can give an overview of what is the plans that you have during your 5 years that you'll be ahead of the bank, not only for, of course, in India and Brazil, again, very important focus, but for the BRICS itself. Perhaps also to give ideas what else we can have to improve this relation between the BRICS countries. Another important issue is that the world became very aware, everybody says that, but in fact it's true, that the world became very conscious that no country can depend so much of only one country, like recently was very clear after this pandemic situation. And this opens enormous opportunities between some countries like India and Brazil, exactly because we are in many areas competitive. Labor is also a very important issue, the quality of labor. So also I would like, Marcos, to hear something from you regarding, and also some opinion from your side. You were also together with us during this delegation at the beginning of this year with this 15 or 20 issues that we signed, very important. And despite this coronavirus, we are, I understand, moving. So you, Deepak, Andre, and also Segovia will be, of course, bringing ideas and suggestions, and mainly of what we will be able to do day after. We hope we'll have a day after of this situation we're having right now. So Marcos, please, you have the word, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Roberto, and congratulations to the Brazil-India Chamber of Commerce for putting together this important webinar. I hope everyone at home and in their offices are keeping safe at this challenging time. It is also my great pleasure to be joined in this discussion by my friend, the Ambassador of Brazil to India, André Corrêa do Lago, by Admiral Sérgio Segovia, the president of APEX, with whom I had the pleasure also, along with you, of visiting India earlier this year. I was then wearing my hat as Deputy Minister of the Economy for Trade and International Affairs. And also by Deepak, who I've had the honor of meeting earlier this year and speaking along a very important business conference that was organized by APEX Brazil and Indian counterparts. Well, Roberto, it's as I said, a very challenging time, and I think one of the best ways to describe it, placing the GPS very high on the map, is that we're probably undergoing a metamorphosis of globalization. Globalization, of course, keeps evolving, but many of the pandemic-related features will probably cause some detours in the way that globalization was heading, and also perhaps some acceleration of trends that we saw already going very strong for quite some time. So probably what I'll do is I'll revisit some of these evolutionary traits in globalization and give you a picture of what I see is the global scenario emerging from the current juncture, and then go deeper into what the new development bank is intending to do in this next cycle of 5 years. But first of all, I mean, just to better clarify what I mean by metamorphosis of globalization, I mean, if everyone joining the seminar embarked with me on a time machine and went back to the year, say, 1989, which is the year in which we witnessed the fall of the Berlin Wall, apparently there were 3 very strong trends emerging that were going to reshape the global landscape. One of them is once international trade and international investment saw many of the barriers to expansion being dismantled, then the entire world would embark on a free trade phase, which indeed happened in a major extent. Global trade expanded at a much bigger proportion than global GDP from 1989 all the way to the end of the first decade of the current millennium. International investment was made more agile and facing less obstacles. This was also true about the movement of people, the movement of capital. And that was also accelerated in some regions because the world also embarked on a very vigorous process of regional integration that was not only economic, but in some cases also political and legal. And perhaps the most important example that we have out there is the European Union, that not only saw it creating policies that were common in areas like agriculture, but also putting together a common parliament in Brussels, a common court in Strasbourg. So regional integration going very strong, but regional integration somewhat seen as a stopover in a deeper process of globalization. And there was also another characteristic of this phase of globalization, which was also going very strong up until very recently, which was the enormous outreach of global supply chains. So countries with huge labor stocks, as it's most notably the case of China, as they opened up to the rest of the world, welcomed a massive amount of foreign direct investment and transformed their economies in true trading nations, which of course explain much of the success that was experienced by Asian economies earlier, even than the 1990s. That was the case most notably of Japan, South Korea, the other Asian tigers. But with China, this gained proportion, it gained scale, and of course this helped create a new outline for global supply chains. Competitive advantages were leaving their heyday, and that was a very strong trait that we could see in this phase of globalization. So I think it would be fair to say that from the fall of the Berlin Wall all the way to the fall of Lehman Brothers, so we're talking essentially about a period of time that encompasses more or less 2 decades, the world was in deep globalization mode. So it's deep globalization mode. More trade, freer flows of investment, more drive towards integration, more drive towards the expansion of global supply chains. But then with the fall of the Berlin Wall, this trend has somewhat been influenced by other factors. So you would see more countries adopting local content policies, more countries adopting versions of economic nationalism, especially by a new interpretation of what industrial policy should mean, more restriction towards investment. We have also seen some of these regional integration processes face serious questioning, as, for example, it is the case of the European Union with a decision by the UK to leave the Union. So the metamorphosis that I was describing perhaps lived a very clear crossroad beginning in 2008. So as also a result of the global financial crisis or the Great Recession of 2008, we changed mode. We went from deep globalization mode to the risk of deglobalization mode, which is where perhaps we still are today. And deglobalization here does not necessarily mean the full reversal, a 180-degree turn of the drivers that we saw before. But it should be understood perhaps in the same way that you understand the notion of deceleration. So in the same way that when you are decelerating, the vehicle is not necessarily stopped or stagnated. There has been a loss in terms of rhythm. There's a change in direction, and there's also a change of rhythm. So yes, globalization is still evolving, but in a different fashion. And now, Roberto, I think that the pandemic is perhaps driving the world to another moment of metamorphosis. And this is very much an open game. It's very much yet to be defined. But it is true, perhaps, to say that some of the trends that we saw at the, say, fourth quarter of these of the game of deglobalization will perhaps be reinforced. And I'm going to mention some of them because I think they're critical, not only to how the global economy is going to perform, but also in terms of how we see the BRICS grouping and what are the major tasks that the new development bank should focus on. So the first of these trends that will continue in spite of the intermission that is represented by the COVID crisis. And once again, I highlight here, as I see it, what we're living currently should not be termed a recession, but it should be termed an intermission, especially because when you compare the current juncture with other situations in the past, our crisis of today did not originate in the economic or the financial worlds. It's something that originated in the health universe, and that brings about very negative impacts on economic performance. But notwithstanding, one of these trends will be that the emerging world, the emerging economies, are going to continue to represent a bigger and bigger slice of the GDP pie. Around 2019, if we looked at global GDP and the share of global GDP represented by the sum total of the so-called G7, so the United States, Japan, Germany, the UK, France, Italy, and Canada, we were talking about a GDP according to the to purchase power parity of about $40 trillion. So that's the combined GDP of the traditional G7. Whereas if you look at the E7, so that's China, India, Brazil, Russia, Indonesia, Mexico, Turkey. If you put these countries together, you're talking about a GDP measured at purchase power parity terms that's already at $53 trillion. So those tectonic shifts that many economists predicted 20 years ago, tectonic shifts that would point to the direction that a bigger slice of the cake would be going to the emerging markets, it's actually happening. I mean, today, once again, in PPP terms, the E7 has expanded much more, and it's at a $53 trillion PPP GDP combined number than the $40 trillion of the G7. So, and this is only going to go on. I mean, we're probably talking about a world in which the top three economies will be China, India, and the United States. So there's not only a kind of eclipse happening there in terms of the economy, but there's also another population eclipse that's very important for us to highlight, because in all likelihood, India may overtake China somewhere between 2030 and 2035 as the most populous country in the world. The United States, of course, will continue to be a central, a dominant economy. Other nations of the G7, very important pivotal states, but it is very clear that this trend towards the emergence of countries like China, like India, like Brazil, like Russia, like Indonesia, Mexico, and many others is here to stay, and it's only going to become more and more important. One other element that I think it's also very important for us to realize is that we are indeed going to see some sort of reconfiguration of global value chains. Naturally, as everyone knows, China became the factory of the world as it opened up and rose to the current $26 trillion PPP GDP economy it is today. So we are going to see some reconfiguration of global value chains. Geopolitics will be one of the factors, but there are many others that we have to consider. And one of them is perhaps the very change in the DNA of China's economy. China will, as we can see, invest more and more abroad. It's investing already a lot in its geoeconomic vicinity. Some of the last value-added manufacturing that was once housed in China is moving to other countries in Southeast Asia and in Africa and in Latin America. And this trend is only going to continue. China, for example, today is no longer a low-cost country, and it leads the world at par with the United States and other nations in areas that are very, very tech intensive. So yes, geopolitical factors will be there, influencing the way that global supply chains are reconfigured, but the evolution of some of these very important players, as those that I have described in the emerging world, will also be a factor in how these global value chains are redrafted. One other element that is very important for us to highlight here in the redefinition of global value chains is trade and investment agreements. I, along with colleagues at the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of External Relations and the partners of Brazil in Mercosul have negotiated and concluded last year the EU-Mercosur agreement. And of course, trade agreements will continue to allow for more trade in goods and in services and agriculture. And these are very important, but they are already facilitators in the flow of investment. So we cannot underemphasize how important trade and investment agreements will continue to be going forward in how these global value chains will be configured. And there's perhaps a fourth element in this global value chains redrafting, which is the importance of domestic reforms. Because at the end of the day, even if you have strong geopolitical tailwinds, even if you have a strong, a vigorous process of outshoring or reshoring in some of the world's biggest economies, if countries themselves do not do their homework in terms of becoming more attractive to foreign direct investment, more attractive to trade investment partnerships, then the benefit that they may extract from this trend towards the reconfiguration of global supply chains will be suboptimal. And I think that the latest trait that I wanted to call your attention to, I mean, there are so many. I just mentioned the 3 years in the next phase of globalization, is what at the World Economic Forum Klaus Schwab has called talentism, or a kind of new age of talent. Talent is as important a factor as capital in defining the success of nations going forward. And talent here goes beyond perhaps just taking benefit from the traditional Ricardian views of how you go about placing your strategy on areas you may have comparative advantages. Comparative advantages are still very important in trade and investment. And I think Brazil becoming an agricultural superpower in recent years and how it fares in global trade as far as agriculture is concerned is a token of that. But more complexities have to be added, more value addition has to take place. And I like to interpret this new age of talent that's being termed by the World Economic Forum as an invitation for countries to add complexity to their economic profile. So I see that as a very important trend going forward as well. Well, how do the BRICS or how does BRICS as an alliance feature in this scenario that I have just described? Well, to begin with, there are some of the most important emerging markets in the world. And if you're talking about a landscape in which the E7 has overtaken the G7 in terms of PPP measured GDP and its slice of the global economy, it suffices to say it's a very, very important grouping. It's very important grouping also because if you think about how the term BRICS first appeared in the news headlines or even in international literature, it related to some asset classes that investment banks reviewed and recommended to clients. So this was a concept that were defined by others, not by the BRICS themselves. So as BRICS come together to discuss the most diverse agenda of topics from the way that the international system is organized to economy and trade and finance and health related issues. This is extremely important because it's not just BRICS being defined from the outside, but BRICS themselves deciding what they want from the world and for the global economy. And in terms of the institutions building, the BRICS have once again gone much farther than other regional coordination groups. For example, the G7 has been meeting for decades, and they never came up with an institution of their own. Whereas the BRICS have a new development bank. It's a reality. It's and it's even more I would say worth attention, because to think back only 5 years ago that the institution where I'm sitting at did not exist, or it existed only on paper, and that it now helps support 60 different projects amounting to a loan book of about $20 billion. That is truly remarkable. In Brazil, for example, in this year, 2020, in all likelihood, the NDB will be the #1 multilateral development bank in terms of projects in the country. And just to give you a way of gauging how important that is, there's another institution also set up recently here in Asia, one that's based in Beijing, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The and the AIIB, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, features more than 100 member countries. They have a loan book that is not as big as the $20 billion loan book that we have at present. So my predecessor, the great Indian banker K.V. Kamath, left us with a great legacy. We have the scale, we have become relevant, and not only in terms of the mandates, the original mandates of the bank that have to do with supporting sustainable development and investment in infrastructure, but also facing up to crises like the ones that we're living today. The new development bank, in a very agile manner, put together a relief and recovery package of $20 billion. So the first half of those resources is going to the health-related issues that are under of course, the umbrella fighting the pandemic. But there's a new slot of $5 billion being devoted to help our member countries speed up their economic recovery. In this next cycle of 5 years, I have huge challenges ahead of the new development bank, because we are a bank, we are a development bank, and we are new in the sense that we were formed by emerging nations. But we want to be more. We want to be new in more than one sense. We want to be new in very different dimensions. For example, we want to be new in terms of how we go about offering member countries our financial products. Of course, we have sovereign loans backed by I mean, we have loans backed by sovereign guarantees, but we want to play a bigger role in project finance, in public-private partnerships, in equity, local currency financing. We also want to be new in terms of identifying those projects that are tech intensive, so they do not only respond to the infrastructure needs of the 20th century, but also to the infrastructure needs of the economy 4.0, which is the one that we have going forward. The very concept of infrastructure is also undergoing its metamorphosis. So we have to keep pace with those changes and make sure that we are also a talent intensive bank, because we want to have the best human capital to be able to provide all of those solutions. There's also the issue of membership expansion. We want to make sure that the institution lives up to this name up here. So yes, it's BRICS centered, and the BRICS will always have the dominant position in our institution, but we want to expand. We want to have new members, and we want to begin that process very soon, because not only will be mitigating risk and allow for diversification, but we'll also be expanding the outreach of the bank. And of course, we want to make the new development bank a very valuable tool, Roberto, to Brazil-India relations. Brazil-India relations can be some of the most consequential partnerships of this next quarter century. And even if you judge by the dramatic expansion of economic exchange between Brazil and China that took place this 20 years, I think it gives us a very good example of how the potential for Brazil-India relations to expand is also there. Just for you to have an idea, and this is a number that I saw the other day and I thought it was most impressive. In 2001, China-Brazil bilateral trade was $1 billion a year. Today, China-Brazil trade is $1 billion every 80 hours. And in all likelihood, even in this very tough and challenging year of 2020, bilateral trade is going to reach, is going to be north of $110 billion. Brazil-India trade should follow the same track. I mean, we are a $7 to $8 billion. We are at the $7-8 billion level currently. This has to be multiplied by 2, by 3, by 4. So there's a lot the partnership can do in paving the way for more trade exchange and goods and technology and agriculture. Of course, India is a major market for Brazilian agricultural goods. Brazil is a superpower of water, and one of the things that would really come in at hand and would help India's development is access also to water. One of the ways you have access to water is having access to agricultural goods that Brazil can export to India. India has become one of the superpowers in information technology. Look at the Bangalore hubs. Look at the great Indian companies operating in software and hardware and smartware. So lots of potential there for partnerships. And an institution like ours is open to financing projects that are also presented by our sovereign nations, and that can help in making that exchange not only more robust, but also to identify areas in which the bilateral relationship can truly flourish. So we are here with open doors, very energized, very enthusiastic, even though the current situation globally presents us with daunting challenges. But I'm sure with our cooperative work, with the partnership between Brazil and India, with the BRICS, with the new development bank, we are going to be able to overcome the current difficulties and emerge this much better than we were before. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcos. A very broad view that you brought, hoping that you'll be very successful. I'm sure you will be for all these projects that you have. Many people ask that if you are going to stay our bank only maybe infrastructure, but I understand the environment also is there. Now health, I think, is in a big way. But I understand you have you have to leave by 8:15 your time. But we have some questions at the end. If we have time, going to give those questions. So I would like to give the word now to our friend, the president of Invest India, Deepak. Yeah, you are there. Uh, Deepak Bagla. All of you will have a very rich curriculum vitae, but we've tried to make a resume with the main things. So Deepak, the managing director and CEO of Invest India, partner of 3i for 7 years, Bachelor of Arts and Economic Studies with honors in St. Stephen's College, Delhi University, diploma in School of Foreign Service area, master's in International Finance and Diplomacy in Georgetown University. Deepak, you and Apex Brazil and Segovia, you signed one of the very important agreements that we had during this mission of President Bolsonaro recently in the beginning of this year. So if you also can give a view of what is happening, what also you believe will be the view for the future, mainly of India, and also if there will be any new inputs for this important program we have in India, which is the Make in India. We know from media that China perhaps will be the only country with a positive GDP this year, despite a very low one. But also some people say that India may also be in a positive, very low again, despite India needs 5-6% growth every year. But the world is a new world. So the world is with you. Please bring your ideas and your proposals. Deepak, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roberto, and thank you really for getting us all together. You know, I was just hearing you, and even when I was coming back from our last trip to Brazil, I remember you should be writing the history book of this relationship. You're the one who's, can you hear me, Roberto? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, Deepak, everyone is hearing you.
Roberto was saying I felt that he couldn't hear me, etc. So I was just saying, no, it was such a pleasure. And Roberto has been managing this corridor for such a long time. We should actually be doing a picture book with him one of these days. But it was such a pleasure to see Marcos again. And Marcos, I remember that presentation you made in Delhi. It is probably one of the most thought-provoking presentations I've been in. And I must tell you, people still refer to it. And my team does very often. And congratulations on your new role. And there's a lot both Sergio and I will be bringing on to your shoulder to see how we get this going more robust, this corridor, because there's a lot to be done. My friend Sergio, good to see you healthy and good to see you back in office. It's always a pleasure. And we've got to get together soon. The last trip had been a bit long and it was too short, but we've got to make that happen. But I'll tell you, and I must also say, Ambassador Correa here is one of the favorite people in the diplomatic circles of Delhi and India. He's won virtually every heart which is around. So if we put it all together, and that is what I was thinking, and I have to take back to what Marcos was saying. This is indeed a very special relationship where I think the potential is now going to show and going to begin. The numbers until now just do not justify the strength, the complementarity, and the number of comfort and trust, which is the relationship between these two countries and these two people. And I believe, as Marcos very well put it, it's going to be a consequential relationship. I see this as one of my most important relationships and partnerships as we move beyond this pandemic and taking forward, where it's going to be helping on the growth of both of us together and our people. I'll tell you what I thought I'll do. Since we are with this virus and we are in this pandemic, and I believe it is going to be one of those watershed points in our histories, I thought, let me just start with what is happening now and just a little before and what do I see after. And what do I start there from is today we are on day 169 of the most unprecedented lockdown in human history. I say unprecedented because Ambassador Correa will tell you the complexity of a lockdown of 1.3 billion people in a country which is known for its highest mobility ever. Let me just put it in perspective on that mobility. Last year itself, and my population is 1.3 billion human resource. Last year, I had over 8 billion people travel on my trains and railways. So you can see a society which is so mobile and suddenly being brought to a halt. And the unprecedented also means that during these 169 days, I've seen floods, I've seen droughts, I've seen earthquakes of minor nature, thankfully, and I've also seen all kinds of geopolitical issues arising around. So every which way, here is a country and a society which is together with its partners, holding high and making it happen. Now, just let me take you 30 days before this entire pandemic or before the lockdown started. We went into a lockdown on the 24th of March. We have a closure of financial year on the 31st of March every year. And the reason why I bring that up, just to give you a statistic on that, is because what I feel this virus has done for us, that it has amplified some of the underlying trends which were already there in the system. And it's very interesting. Marcus, I remember in our conversation in his visit to Delhi, had mentioned some of these trends. He actually had foreseen what might be going forward. And one of them was de-risking of supply chains. And I will come back to that a little later. But 31st March 2020, that is the end of my financial year, I closed with an FDI of $74 billion. It's the highest ever FDI I've got in my history. And my independence was 1947, more or less. So you can see the number of years. But some interesting factors of that 74 billion. One, 93% of that 74 billion came in what we call as the automatic route. That meant that no investor required any special approvals to invest. Basically, India today remains one of the most open economies on the planet. And the government has taken, and especially Prime Minister Modi's government has taken huge steps to open virtually each and every sector of our economy where private sector can play a role in it. However, the more interesting factor of that 74 billion was that close to half of that, Sergio, and we discussed it here when you were here, is greenfield investment. Today, we are now one of the top greenfield investment destinations in the world. But more importantly, it gives me the comfort that the global investor today is willing to take a long-term call on India. That comfort is there. That comfort for long and patient capital is coming in. So where did this 74 billion, why did it come? One of the underlying trends, and Marcus spoke about that, was how we are seeing de-risking happening in global businesses and supply chains. This is class 101 of economics and business is de-risking, and we all seem to have forgotten about it during the past 2 decades. And we all started concentrating our supply chains in a few geographies. I think this little virus hit it right in the face. This is what has got amplified the vulnerability of concentration of supply chains. So what am I seeing happening? One is that supply chain movements, which I was seeing, which were getting onshored to where the market was. I see that happening at a much faster rate now. And I'm seeing a significant number of business queries from across the globe coming into us. Huge increase, especially during the past 120 days, asking me about the supply chains and how fast we can move them, etc. Look at it, what was India's position before the virus started? And Marcus alluded to some of those. We were the largest consumer market in the world. He mentioned by 26, 27, I will have a consumer base of about 1.5 billion people. I think at least for the next 100 years, you will not have any other single national geographic boundary with so many customers. So the largest. We were one of the fastest growing large economies. We hope to get into that position the moment we are out of this virus and this intermission, as was so well put. And I will touch upon that a little later. We were the youngest, average age 29. So I think consumerism remains high. But what I saw happening in these past 120 to 150 days is the government making this pandemic into a huge opportunity. I think we had some very strong imperatives, compelling imperatives for an investor to invest in India. I told you 3 of those pillars: largest, fastest, youngest. The government now focused on creating the 4th pillar and making it stronger, mainly making it easier for the businesses to come and start operating in India. And Marcus, you mentioned that towards the end of your remarks. During the past 120 days, there have been unprecedented reforms in India announced both at my state government levels and my central government level, which are basically ease of doing business, less and less number of approvals required, creating a single window where you can come and starting getting all your approvals within a given timeline. I know you've all been doing it, Sergio. For us, we're doing it now and we're making it faster. And coming up, so I have about 3,700 industrial clusters, each focusing on some specific products. We're trying to upgrade those to create plug and play facilities. So the 4th pillar of making it easier for our partners to partner with. That is what has been now a huge focus point for the government. And that is what we've done. And what I'm seeing now is all those partners who've been able to see through that, to be able to see that they are now coming in with their requests with the team. In fact, I'm going to be doing a 3x of my entire team size in the next 120 days of the number of queries which have come in. What is happening now? Where do I see this entire, so the first trend was of de-risking. Supply chains moving closer, onshoring to where the market is. And the second element of that, supply chains which had become very extended and long, I see them becoming shorter. So you will see more and more cluster approaches being taken up by countries across the globe, where they will provide an ecosystem so that the entire business can work in together around that place. That is the other element which is going to happen as a part of the de-risking. And that is another element which we are doing very actively to perform to make that happen. Now comes the second underlying trend which was there, and which is work from anywhere. Frankly, I'm quite exhausted with it. You know, I'm working from home, what you might call it. There is no delineation between work and home, and completely exhausted. There is no other life. So I'm more than happy the day it all opens up and I'm back to work. But frankly, what I'm seeing now, this work from home, is actually meaning working from anywhere. So I'll give you an example of what has already happened. TCS, Tata Consultancy Services, which is one of my largest IT companies, and they have a big presence in Brazil, as you know, has already announced that 70% of its workforce in the next 5 years will work from home. Now, just think of the underlying trends this will unleash. And I'm not just talking of the cost arbitrage, it all becoming cheaper because office spaces will be less, real estate will be done. I'll tell you how it is impacting India in a big way. 70% of India lives in its villages, which is about 10 to 11% of the world's population lives in my villages. What this work from home has done, and that is what has been amplified by this virus, but it has been helped immensely by the huge digitization effort of Prime Minister Modi, which he's done in the past 60 months. What has happened is, I have over 600,000 villages. And then I have a large number of small towns and cities. For the first time in my history, I see India becoming one. That means that entire workforce, that entire human resource of 1.3, 1.4 billion coming together as one. And why do I say that? Because this digitization is now creating the access to opportunity and access to market in a democratized manner. A youngster in a village will be able to access an academic environment on his digital platform as anybody else from a larger city. So what is it taking me to, Sergio? What it is taking me to is that the moment we move out of this virus, the growth of new India is going to be bottom up. It is going to move beyond those 12 or 13 or 17 large industrial centers, which would have taken up or accounted for 70% of India's industrial growth, taking it down to the smaller towns and cities. So not only does it bring in a cost arbitrage, it also creates a completely different set of dynamics in the kind of solutions which are going to start coming to the new challenges which you and I are going to face in the new world. And I'll give you an example there. On the 30th of March, when we entered with this virus, India did not have a single PPE being made in India. We were scurrying around across the globe, trying to get PPEs for ourselves, and most of the countries were closed. On 15th of July, I have a run rate of 800,000 PPEs to 1 million PPEs a day. Not just enough for my own self, but PPEs which I'm exporting. I've now created my own ventilators, which were in absolute short supply for my own hospitals. And I'm exporting them to countries even like UK and the US. How was this possible? This was possible because my MSMEs and my startups and the huge innovation and entrepreneurship which happened in India. That is where Invest India came in. The team was working day and night. Sergio, I sent you some of my daily reports, if you recollect, on your WhatsApp. Sorry for banging you on that. But they teamed up with the larger companies to create these solutions. And these solutions were created at price points which were less than 1/5 of what the global price points were, at a global quality which was higher, or at best matching every other global quality which was required. That was the strength of the India's MSMEs and startups, which is now going to start coming up. Prime Minister Modi launched my Startup India in January 2016. I'm just 48, 50 months away from there. I'm number 3 in the world today in number of unicorns. I'm number 2 in the world in number of startups. I'm number 1 in the world with new startups adding every day. And what is interesting of my MSMEs is, one, their ability to pivot their business models in a very nimble manner. I had a hosiery maker working to make N95 masks. I had a bicycle maker making ventilators. I had a forgery guy doing another set of ventilators and requirements which could be mentioned. And again, I mentioned they did it all within a period of 90 days. And they did it really fast, and they changed their entire business models. So what is the world of tomorrow which is going to be required after we move out of this? For challenges faced by you and me, we need those new solutions. We need those new business models. And we need companies which are really going to pivot and move fast and be able to perform and change them. And most importantly, the best utilization of capital. In a capital shortage country like India and an economy, these youngsters, these MSMEs which I have, by the way, I have about 65 million MSMEs in India. 40% or 45% of my GDP, of industrial GDP, manufacturing GDP, still comes from them. And I see that being the new engine of growth taking forward as we move out of this virus. And that is one place where Sergio and I, both of us, we discussed, we have to get that partnership stronger. Our MSMEs, our startups, our innovators, our entrepreneurs working together. We just had 2 fintech webinars just in the past 60 days, just with Brazil and India. And we're going to have 2 more, Sergio, as you know. In those 2 fintech seminars, we had over 6,700 people who attended them. This partnership can create wonders. When I told you that we've just begun, it has actually just begun. And that's just one sector, Sergio, which I'm talking about. Let me take you to some of the other sectors which we are looking at. Some of the other sectors which we are looking at. You can't hear me? Sorry. Is it okay? Yeah. So I was saying that the other sectors which you and I have been working on are some of those traditional ones like textile, defense, food processing, renewable energy. And thanks to Marcos for sending us some assistance, especially these days On the renewable side, also funding one of our projects, innovation, startup, agriculture. But one sector where we need to start working very quickly is water. India today has embarked on the world's largest water project. Prime Minister Modi has said that in the next 36 months, he's going to connect 600 million people with a tap in their house with the drinking water across the country. This is where one of the biggest opportunities lies for a partnership to create sustainable impact. And this is where you will see new solutions happening on a very quick, fast basis. Now I just bring down myself to my last 2 points. The last point being that the biggest thing about India, you will see this becoming a watershed time for us. You will see a leapfrogging happening of India in a big and a major manner. India of 2021 will be very, very different from India pre-2020. That is going to be a new India. And this new India, I've already given you some elements of it, is going to be an India which is coming bottom up from those small towns and cities and not just top down. This India is going to be driven by data. And if we look at data as being the new oil, and you remember I mentioned it in my presentation when you were here, and Marcos, you mentioned about the data point again. If I look at per capita data consumption today, 48 months ago, India's global ranking in per capita data consumption was about 124. Late last year and early this year, India's ranking in per capita data consumption is #1 in the world. In fact, we consume more per capita mobile data than China and the US put together. That is what I meant by leapfrogging. By leapfrogging meant that if we are looking at Industry 4.0, how we move on very fast into that Industry 4.0 from some places which are at Industry 2.0 or 3.0. And that leapfrogging is the one which is now based on new kinds of solutions, new technologies, and this is where we need to bring our partnership together and stronger. Because the number and the kind of opportunities is going to open up is going to be very, very significant. And that is where we want our old partners, our close partners where we can trust together to get the solutions going. So I think I've already crossed my time limit, and I know Roberto must be getting very unhappy about that one. I do want to say that I very firmly believe this relationship is now, at least on the economic and the industry side of it, is going to see a completely new set of momentum. It is for each one of us on this call to take up that mantle and to make it happen. Sergio and I have already decided, our teams are working much more closer. The moment we are out of this virus, we're going to have people also working together in each other's countries to see how we can facilitate and make it happen. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity. I do want to let you know I have a special dedicated team to handhold each and every investment coming in from Brazil. I have my team members on the call with me as we speak, and I look forward to growing this partnership and to make it one of the strongest partnerships ever to showcase to the entire world. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, everyone. It's a new beginning, and let's make it happen.
Deepak, I thank you very much for your speech. Very important. The view that you bring from India, speaking mainly for the future 21. And very important that all of us, we know that opportunities between both of our countries, we are profiting very little. We should grow much more. We have in the past, we had a $12 billion balance between both countries. For different reasons, we came for almost half. But important that we, for those agreements we have, and also the view that you are bringing, and our friends, Marcos, and our friends also will bring their ideas, we have to make this effort, more meetings. If it's not in person, it has to be in the virtual way. But thank you very much. And also, at the end, if there is some time, there's people asking something about the startups and some other areas. So now we have our very good friend, very capable, efficient president of Apex that will be with us, our Admiral Sergio Segovia. Also a short CV, Deputy Secretary in the Inter-American Naval Telecommunication Network for 4 years, officer in charge of the Division of Communications and Information Technology in Brazilian Navy, military secretary in the Office of the Commander of the Navy, Office of the Chief of Staff, captain in Brazilian Navy polar ship 2 years and 4 months, commander of the 2nd Division of the Fleet in Brazilian Navy for 1 year, and 1 month and president of 1 year and 1 month now as president of our Apex Brazil since 2019. So Segovia, we've been following since the beginning your proposals, your firm position to make important work, and you are doing. So please, you have the word to bring your speech to us. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you for the kind invitation to participate in this webinar. I also would like to greet Ambassador André Corrêa do Lago, Mr. Marcos Trujillo, President of the New Development Bank, Mr. Deepak Bagla, President of Invest India, and you, Mr. Roberto Paranhos do Rio Branco, President of the Brazil-India Chamber of Commerce, and all those who are with us in this meeting. It's hard to have the floor after my two colleagues have the opportunity. And I will just reinforce what they said before. I start my participation by reaffirming that Apex Brazil is closely following on how trade relations between India and Brazil have gotten stronger, especially considering the partnership in the context of BRICS, a platform for cooperation with growing importance for updating trade and investment opportunities. Historically, Brazil has the honor of being perceived globally as a highly reliable business partner, able to serve different markets. As it is widely known, the country offers countless opportunities in trade and investments. In this regard, the presence of a Brazilian at the head of NDB is strategic, as a representative who knows Brazil and its potential very well. Equally relevant is the strengthening of relations with India and the important milestone established at the beginning of 2020 with the presidential mission to the country. Apex Brazil has actively participated in this endeavor, leading a trade mission in partnership with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs during the visit of President Bolsonaro to New Delhi. In the mission, there were about 70 representatives of Brazilian companies and trade associations from a wide range of industries such as food and beverage, biofuels, biotechnology, furniture, defense, pharmaceuticals, shoes and leather, home and construction, metals and precious stones, minerals, chemicals, cereals, machinery, and IT equipment and services. The agency also promoted, in the same occasion, a business seminar that had the participation of more than 1,000 Indian business persons, where there was a noticeable interest in strengthening the economic commercial relationship with Brazil. As I mentioned before, we have set a milestone for a new moment in the Brazil-India economic partnership. And in this context, among other advances, we hope to be able to double the trade flow in the medium term, better saying, in the next 2 or 3 years. As part of the presidential mission, Brazil has signed a set of 15 international acts covering cooperation in a wide range of sectors, from bioenergy to oil and gas, as well as research on mineral resources and geological knowledge and activities in the mining sector. Brazil and India have also decided to establish forms of joint action in cybersecurity, as well as in the areas of health and agriculture, which indicates mutual intention to work towards joint development. Looking at the broad scope for cooperation ahead, I stress regarding Apex Brazil's initiatives that two aspects are especially relevant: investments and partnership in sectors such as bioenergy. Concerning to bioenergy, in harmony with the guidelines of the Ministry of Mines and Energy and the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Food Supply, considering private inputs from the Brazilian Sugarcane Industry Association, UNICA. Our goal is not merely trade promotion. We want to have India, a major sugarcane producer, as an ally for the establishment of a true global market for biofuels. With respect to investments, we focus on the sectors defined as priorities by the agency, among which I would highlight infrastructure, renewable energy, and agribusiness. However, there are several agendas that we are interested in forwarding together, so the benefits may be reached for both Brazil and India. The partnership between Apex Brazil and Invest India will be essential in this regard. I had the honor to sign with my friend Deepak Bagla in the presence of President Jair Bolsonaro and Prime Minister Modi, an innovative cooperation agreement between our two institutions. We could hardly imagine how this cooperation would quickly gain effectiveness and be relevant in the context of the pandemic and current trends, which include the reconfiguration of global value chains, as said by Max Trujillo. We have kept close contact and worked on several fronts. Recently, Invest India invited Apex Brazil to take part in the project Investment Opportunities Interactive Session. We will be present to talk about opportunities for investments in innovation in Brazil. In October, the launch of the Brazil-India Knowledge Bridge is planned at the Invest India web portal. It's an electronic platform on innovation ecosystems in Brazil, which details on venture capital and private equity investment scenarios, as well as practical information regarding the opening of startups. Within the cooperation framework, we have even agreed for exchange of personnel. Invest India, which already has such practice with a few other countries, stimulated this, and we are just waiting for the overcoming of the health crisis to be able to lead this process safely. With more than 70 years of diplomatic relations, Brazil and India, currently the fifth largest economy on the planet, promote without a doubt an upgrade in bilateral relations, which gain more density with a great quality leap, as said by Deepak Bagla. Apex Brazil feels honored to participate so actively in this process. I remind you that the commercial exchange with India, which was approximately $488 million in 2000, reached $7 billion in 2019. Brazilian exports to India last year were $2.77 billion, and 40% of them were made by companies supported by Apex Brazil. I must mention that India ranks among the 10 largest export destinations of companies supported by the agency, with sales in 2019 reaching $1.1 billion. Considering that Apex Brazil conducts more than 50 sector projects, 6 have India as a priority market, including, just for instance, actions in major trade fairs such as Annapurna Anufood. In 2019, those enterprises went back to Brazil with a turnover above $100 million, which offered the agency new reasons to encourage the exchange of knowledge about Indian market. With that in mind, in 2019, we published 4 studies focused on business opportunities in the Indian market. In 2020, another one will be released. On the innovation front, our team works on the design of a specific plan to promote initiatives involving Indian and Brazilian corporates, thus facilitating the access of startups from both countries to investment opportunities. Furthermore, we hope to be able to count on Invest in India in programs such as Start Out Brazil, Scale Up in Brazil, and Tech Makers, all focused on innovation and disruptive business. Our expectations from a joint work with India, as can be seen, are the best. Before concluding, I'd like to point out that Apex Brazil remains highly attentive to the relevance of BRICS. Last year, the agency supported and executed approximately 70 trade and investment promotion initiatives in the BRICS countries, which comprises 14% of all promotion activities carried out by the agency. The challenges imposed by the pandemic are compelling us to review processes and adopt modern solutions to maintain the high level of products and services offered. We are speeding a major digital transformation, and many of our new business models in this post-pandemic phase will certainly reach or involve the BRICS countries. I'd like to finish by thanking you again for the invitation to the webinar and reaffirm that Apex Brazil is at your service. Thank you.
Yes, Segovia, thank you very much for your very open and very detailed explanation. Who is following, as we are following, the Apex activities and your work, we can see exactly that we are having an Apex that perhaps we never had before. Very important, those agreements were signed, and you and the PAC are developing in a big way these opportunities despite the pandemic situation. One thing that I know that also you just said, but it's very important to reinforce, during all my life, and also Rubens Barbosa and other friends, we've always been saying that when we cannot compete from Brazil, some companies, a few became multinationals. I was involved in one of them, which is Embraco compressors for refrigerators. But exactly one of the supports that you are also is growing in our Apex is to make Brazilian companies to be more international to some way. That's why also I asked about to Deepak about the situation of Make in India. Unfortunately, our friend Marcos Troijo has had a previous commitment, and he says he has to leave by now. So if you want, Marcos, to say some words, there were some questions that I'll send to you, such as, for instance, friends from South Africa, how they can get projects approved, mainly infrastructure for medium-sized companies, if it's possible, how they can go. Also, there is another important question, is how the Development Bank can help Indian entrepreneurs with cross-currency transactions. Well, just a few, mention a few. The others that we could not, and probably will not be able to answer, we are going to send it to your people, to your assistants, and then perhaps we'll be able to answer. Also, Eduardo from Unica is asking if there's a special plan for the ethanol between India and Brazil, since India imports such a big volume of oil. So I believe those things were signed in those agreements in January. But anyhow, Marcos, you have to leave, but few words, if you can, just before leaving,
Sure,
please.
sure.
before
Roberto,
we
I
go.
was delighted to participate in this discussion. I'm
I'm
so sorry that I have this engagement that I have to rush off to. And among other things, I am going to miss watching to what I'm certain will be a brilliant presentation by Ambassador André just now. My team and I, Roberto, are looking forward to addressing some of the questions that you have just read from South Africa, from Brazil, from India, for all BRICS nations. And I am also, Roberto, suggesting that we do more webinars like this. I mean, either in person or virtually. This is extraordinarily useful. Among other things, the New Development Bank has a role to play as a platform to enhance the cooperation involving our member countries. So I encourage you very much to take the lead on new webinars. And once again, it was my pleasure to participate, and I remain at your service here. Okay. Goodbye very much. Goodbye, my friends. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Marcos, thank you again very much for joining. Your suggestion, very important, to do more webinars like this, I think is the best way. This is the new reality that the virus brought to us, that we can be together in this distance, but I think it's extremely important, as you're suggesting. Pity that you are going to miss André's speech, but
Yeah.
you will be able to have this.
I'll watch it later on.
But
Goodbye.
anyhow,
Thank you very much.
thank you very much. Thank you very much for the next. Let's organize in the very near future. Thank you,
Sure.
Marcos.
Thank you.
Take care. So now I can give the word to André. André, Ambassador André Correa do Lago also belongs to a very traditional diplomatic family. But most of all, also, I think is not, this is a small resume of his important curriculum vitae. André is a Brazilian diplomat with a very important performance since ECO 92 summit in Rio de Janeiro. Even we were together there. Yeah, an outstanding performance on the environment sector of Brazilian Ministry of Foreign Relations and other national and international summits. We were together in India in some of those important summits. As diplomat, he served in many different countries, if I would mention a bit long. Before being the Brazilian ambassador in India, he was for 5 years a very active also ambassador in Japan. He has been in India since December 2008, if I'm not wrong. He's also a writer and has published 6 books about mainly architecture, and was the first Brazilian invited to be part of the jury of the BRICS Award. If you want to add something more, because you have a very rich CV. But André, I think also you can make some comments, not only based on these speeches that we had today, but also this approach of opportunities between both countries, the very important role you had in this also delegation that we had with President Bolsonaro. We were happy that we had for quite a number of days, some of the most important ministers of Brazil that made this solid delegation successful. And you, with your capacity, you are making a follow-up and making many other things happen. I know also in the other area that you and I like the cultural side. So please, you have the word to bring also your suggestions and ideas. And please, you have the word.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Roberto, for organizing this meeting. And I want to say that I'm so enthusiastic that our new NDB president is not only a Brazilian, but a Brazilian that has a large experience with trade and with investment, and a Brazilian that was in the official delegation of the president during the visit to India this year. I'm so glad to share also this webinar with Segovia, who has also been present and has been so active. And I thank him very much for taking very strongly the commitments of its agreements with Invest India. Deepak, you are absolutely central to our relations, and I was very glad to see your enthusiasm, and we will continue to work so well here in New Delhi. Thank you very much. I would like also to mention that we have some a wonderful public today, and I want to register mainly the ambassador of Russia, who is presiding BRICS this year and has been with us during this webinar. Also thank Ambassador Rubens Barbosa, who is the president of IRISI. But I want very much to stress that the new ambassador of India to Brazil, Suresh Reddy, who will arrive next week to Brazil, is also watching and also a wonderful partner in this effort. We're going to work together. I have to mention so many people. I've seen that Eduardo from Munich is there. Our consul Kemka is there. Roberto Teixeira da Costa, one of the most admired persons in my country. So I'm really, really glad that Roberto, you could put together this wonderful group. I think though all the essentials were already mentioned, I would like to stress just 2 or 3 things. First, a bit following what Deepak said, we are following with infinite admiration what India is facing with this pandemic. Brazil and India are 2 countries that were especially hit by the pandemic, but we have an amazing amazing people. We are working very hard together, and we have to thank India also for supporting Brazil very much. But I want to stress already 2 good examples very quickly of investments from India in Brazil and investments from Brazil in India. And I want to mention, I think, 2 cases that were very clear in the visit of the president. First, the most important Indian investment now in Brazil is Sterlite, that has won a series of competitions for electricity distribution and is investing very heavily in Brazil. But most of all, I heard from its president that their experience in Brazil has been extremely positive, and so he is a bit an ambassador of more Indian investments in Brazil. On the other side, we have here an amazing Brazilian company, WEG. WEG is the 3rd largest heavy electric equipment company in the world, and it has an impressive factory. I visited in Osur, and it is not only building extraordinary irrigation turbines, but is now also working on eolic infrastructure. And I believe these 2 companies symbolize very much how we can work together. And on working together, I have to mention that Deepak was particularly happy on mentioning some issues that stress that one of our common characteristic between Brazil and India is the dynamism of the private sector. I think we have to work more on that, and I'm so glad that that Segovia and Deepak are so committed to build that bridge. We have a big issue, which is capital shortage, as was pointed, and that's why Marcos in NDB will play an absolutely central role, and we have to be very innovative. We have to be creative on how we can achieve all the capital that we need for India and for Brazil to go towards its development. I want to mention also that the 2 governments, both India and Brazil, are extremely committed with the SDGs. And the SDGs are essentially goals that encompass all the issues that we have mentioned here, because it's the economic, the social, and the environmental dimension, but it encompasses energy, it encompasses obviously sanitation, health, and sanitation is an area that I believe that we can work together very strongly, even more now that we have changed the legislation in Brazil. We have a big difference some big differences between our countries. One of them is the numbers that Deepak mentioned, that any country feels completely humiliated by all these billions and all this, and we admire India infinitely for finding solutions for such an extraordinary diversity that it carries. But India has this a unique demographic dividend that it has to prepare and it has to use at best. And I think Brazil can work very strongly with that. We don't have the demographic dividend that India has anymore, but we are still in it, and we have to really concentrate on how we use our time better. The other big difference between our countries is the urban dimension, because as Deepak mentioned, almost 70% of the population of India doesn't live in urban area. And in Brazil, we are almost 90% urban. And we have experiences in this area that I think we have to share. We have amazing companies, we have amazing solutions. And the scale of India, obviously, being so challenging, I think, will be there for all this infrastructure in cities, roads, train, all that. I believe that we can work together very strongly. Finally, on energy, and since I mentioned the SDGs, I want to stress also, like Segovia did, the importance of biofuels. And I think that we advanced enormously since the visit also. UNICA has been very active, very present in India, and we want to come back to this agenda very strongly as soon as the pandemic lets us advance. Just to finish saying, it's an incredible privilege to be here in this country at this moment and to represent this relationship at the moment that it's definitely at its peak. But we have a big challenge, Segovia. Our leaders promised to double the trade between our countries in a few years. So I think that we need lots of these webinars, and I thank Roberto. We have a lot to do, but it's extremely exciting. And the more I'm in India, the more I see it's a unique partner for Brazil. And in the BRICS context, I have to say that the NDB is one of the great achievements and one of the most important symbols of the BRICS, and the importance of all those numbers that Marcus has presented on how our economies represent much more than it is in the mind of most people. So let's work together, and thank you very much to all of you to be here together, and count on me and my team at the embassy in New Delhi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you very much. And also I must thank you, your team. Many times we've been together, and we had also the chance to see again they working with you during this delegation that we had at the beginning of the year. Everybody was wonderful because they have a wonderful leader with them. Important all the points that you've been pointing out right now. And as Marcus said, let's make more, and the intention is to make from now on more frequently, more webinars. Already I've been asking some of your people of your team about health, even though some other discussions have been going on. But health was a very important issue. It became much more important, and India has an important role in this point. No, I believe that we can do much more between both countries. I would like to point some few questions here. Just raise them. For instance, Segovia, perhaps even Andrea can say something regarding this. This plan is not so in details, but Brazil is willing and having some strong effort for privatizing some of the activities we have in Brazil. Right now, we have even with Petrobras, some of the refineries, they are at the moment to be privatized. There are some Indian groups interested and they are trying to be there. So perhaps you can make some comments regarding this issue. Also, André and perhaps Deepak and also Segovia may say something. If there is any in telecom, one of the segments, if there is a special effort for cooperation, we are talking so much of 5G here in Brazil. We are going to have also this bid for next year. It's an important issue. So also if you perhaps make some comments regarding this issue. Another thing that I know that Rubens always shows that is not so easy, but for a long time I've been proposing, and there are some questions here regarding if BRICS, besides the bank, which is the soul of BRICS today, could do some other agreements that will bring more importance for the 5 countries that we represent. One of them will be perhaps a free trade tax system between both countries, or what kind of exchange of efforts we can do to give preference to the products of each country, of course, each one with their main vocation. So those issues, if the 4 of you want to make some comment, the 3 of you, please, André, you still there? You want to start? Please to make some comments. Just to be fair, as you said, you told me that the ambassador of Russia is there, but also we have some other ambassadors attending this meeting, former ambassadors, but also ambassadors that are still, one of them is a lady, she's an ambassador of Austria in Colombia. But since there is a strong movement that you've been leading also in India with the leading ladies, the leading women, and she belongs to this important group. And also we intend to make some more events involving the women of India and Brazil, and of course, BRICS in some moment. But please, your comments, Greg.
I admit to you, I would prefer to hear Segovia and Deepak maybe first, and then maybe I complete, but I'd love to hear them.
Segovia.
Yes, now I can talk. But let's follow the order. I think Deepak must be the first, and then I'm the second, and then the ambassador the third. I think because we keep the order we have had before.
Eu estou com som ainda. So, okay, Deepak, please, you have the word.
Okay, so this was first on the PPP projects. Am I right, Roberto, and other opportunities, including telecom? Is that the comment? Roberto? I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
Okay, so very quickly, if I may just suggest to everyone, you know, on our Invest India website, it's investindia.gov.in. We have started an investment grid, India investment grid. This grid has over 10,000 project opportunities totaling over $1.5 trillion. You can go on to this, you can go through the sector-wise, you can see all projects, or well, a large number of projects which are today looking for debt or equity, which can be in a PPP format, which can be in an all-government format, it could be in a private format. So that is a big menu of projects which is available for global investors to look at and to see where they can start working with India. And I would strongly urge you to do that. In addition to that, if you have any specific queries of any kind, please send them to us. You will have the dedicated team work with you to show you where the opportunity is, within that sector, including telecom. There is a lot happening. On infrastructure, it is immense. You know, I must tell you, so the former US ambassador, when he was leaving India, this was just about a couple of years ago, in his farewell speech, made a very interesting comment that 70% of India of 2030 is yet to be constructed. And that brings you to the enormity and the immense sense of opportunity which is sitting, especially on that entire infrastructure piece. Today, I have a GDP of about 3 trillion. And we're looking at a number of about anywhere close to 5 trillion by 25, 26, and 10 trillion by 2030, 31. So I'm going to be looking at adding $7 trillion to private sector balance sheets in the course of the next decade. And a large part of that comes from across. So please, I would urge you all to have a look at that menu, which is already available, and you will be able to get a good idea as to where these project opportunities are. And we are adding new projects to it on a daily basis. So after that, and even otherwise, please send us any specific query. More than happy to work with you on that. Thank you, Roberto.
Okay, I think that's my time now.
Just one word, Segovia, please. Just
Okay.
1 second. Just to tell Deepak, very important what you just brought. A second observation I want to do. My relation with India started mainly with the diaspora of India. So here in our chamber and also all the meetings we go, we of course we say the great opportunity about India, all these things, but also very important, the diaspora of India perhaps is the biggest in the world. I understand our Prime Minister Narendra Modi finally made an inventory, more or less about 25 million Indians, many of them in very important positions besides being very important entrepreneurs. So always I call the attention. I don't know afterwards, besides your comments, Segovia, Deepak, if there is any special plan regarding the involvement of this diaspora. Secondly, I spoke even yesterday with our new ambassador, Suraj Reddy, and also Deepak in Segovia. And he says exactly, he's coming next week. But we hope that he's going, not hope, we are sure that he is going to make a very important also work here in Brazil. And I believe he is attending this webinar. But please, Segovia, your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, Deepak. You asked about how to double this trade with India. I can tell you that we started this. We have an example today. I have to wake up 5 o'clock a.m. to be present to this meeting. So that is an example how concerned I am about doubling this partnership. We have today India FDI in Brazil about 1.7 billion US dollars. Mainly of these investments are in the transformation industry and extractive industry. And you know that we have today the greatest investment projects on infrastructure in Brazil. And I think this is a way for India to increase the investment in Brazil. And this is an opportunity we have during this government to have this relationship closer, and these investments will help a lot to diversify the India investments stock in Brazil. So we have this partnership, we have this opportunity, we have good how can I say, people, the correct people, both sides that are willing to have this partnership be greater than this is in the moment. I think that it is feasible to double or even more the trade and the attraction of investments between Brazil and India.
Well, following the
Roberto?
order
Sorry.
and completing, I would like to remind also that we have a very important instrument that's now in our hands. We signed in January the Investment Facilitation and Cooperation Treaty. In fact, it's the first one that India signs with a major economy, a new model of investment agreement. So this is an extremely important step. On the Indian side, it's already ready to be implemented. On the Brazilian side, it's advancing in our structure to be approved. It has to be approved by Congress. But I think that the negotiation of this treaty was extremely complex, and I think that we have an amazing instrument. We also have signed the Social Security Agreement, which is very, very important for foreign direct investments. And now we are very happy also because we are ready to sign the agreement to avoid double taxation. So we are going to have some essential instruments to facilitate and stimulate investment in both countries by Indians and by Brazilians. So I just wanted to recall that and thank again Deepak and Segovia for being instrumental in continuing and using these documents.
You know, Andrea, now at the end, Deepak wants to talk. Now, I was going to exactly to ask you, Andrea, and also Segovia, and also Deepak, but you, Andrea, that was very ahead of this situation of the agreements, exactly to make some comments, which are among those agreements that we signed. I understand 15 were official, but it was 20 or something, that are really moving in a faster way, in a better way, and what are the expectations that, as you just said, for something that also may have happened. But if also you want to add something else, also Segovia wants to add something else, and Deepak about those agreements, please make some comment. Also, Andrea, I would like, if you can invite, we have some few minutes, it still will be interesting, to have the ambassador of Russia, that is with the mission of exactly taking care of BRICS this year, if he wants to also bring some ideas, speak something in our meeting. But first of all, the three of you, if you want to make some comments regarding those agreements, please have the word. Who wants to start first? Deepak or Segovia?
Thank you. Thank you. No, really, I appreciate this. And I must say that as His Excellency mentioned, the one on trade and facilitation and investment facilitation, and especially my marriage certificate with Apex Brazil, very, very critical, very helpful. And we are completely committed to see that making a very active and a classic case for others to look at. I must also add here that the importance of this relationship, and one of the ways to see it is now that we have Ambassador Reddy taking over. He's one of our most respected and senior most diplomats. And his appointment there is a testimony to showcase the importance of our relationship with Brazil. I've had the fortune of sitting with him before he left Delhi in his plans, and he has certain very exciting thoughts and ideas which we would be executing on getting this entire corridor more robust. So we really look forward to that. And these kind of gatherings which you organize, Roberto, will go a long way. Thank you, everyone.
May I?
Yeah, please. I just want to,
Okay.
before you talk, just again, I would like to have a few words from our Ambassador Rubens Barbosa, who is a very active action here in this all international activities. And so after you, Segovia, perhaps Rubens can give a word. And also I have to say that I'm glad that Roberto Teixeira, a colleague for many years in our company, Brasmotor, Brastemp, also a member of our board, is with us today. But Segovia, please, have the word.
Okay, I fully agree what Deepak Bagla said. I can tell you that our agreement is the one that is running since the very first moment, because the day before we signed this agreement, we started conversations in Deepak Bagla's office since the very first moment, and we are working on that every day. As we said, we and Deepak, we agreed on exchange personnel, and we did not make that because of the pandemic, because was our intention in April this year start this partnership, exchanging people so that both India and Brazil could learn how we work better. And I can tell you without a doubt that this agreement is the one that is fully ahead. Is fully ahead, and we will have good news. We are having good news, and we will have good news sooner. More good news sooner. Thank you.
Thank you, Segovia. Very good. These are good news. Soon we are having very important, but we know that you are both, Deepak, and you moving in a big way, and also Ambassador is following.
I have to stress something that everything is doing very well because of the work of Ambassador André Corrêa do Lago. He is a very supportive person, and with this support, with the support of the Brazilian embassy in India, we will be making much more, much more.
Very good, very good. And I agree completely. But André, you prefer to say a few words now, or let's make Rubens Barbosa make some comment, and then you, at the end, you say something. You want to come and say some words?
I prefer to hear Rubens, etc., that want to talk, as you mentioned.
Rubens, you have the sound.
No, Rubens. No, I'm the last one.
Well,
thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to follow the whole morning this meeting, and very upbeat and very positive. And I think that it's about time that we have this kind of mood in our bilateral relations. I'm very impressed by the progress that you have done in the last few months, especially in terms of investment, this agreement, double taxation. And there are some ideas that were floated during the meeting, especially this partnership in promoting ethanol. This is a good idea, since India and Brazil are two large sugar producers. And I think that Brazilian companies now, after the pandemic crisis, will have other opportunities. And I see that the group is very committed. And I think that under your leadership, for the first time, we'll have concrete ideas and the possibility of moving forward quickly. I congratulate all of you on this, and you have to use more the new development bank. You know, Brazil and India, especially Brazil now with the need for investment funds, will perhaps have to resort more efficiently to the resources of the new development bank. Congratulations again, and I look forward to the results of what you're promising, the delivery. Thank you.
Thank you, Rubens. Thank you. And also, I would like to give to André, if somebody wants also to speak. But Roberto Teixeira, since he's with us, if you want to give a short word, please, you are free to do it.
Okay, Roberto, thank you very much for the invitation. It's quite a privilege to participate in a webinar like that. As you mentioned, I had been sitting in different boards of corporations for the last 30, 20 years. And the one thing that always called my attention, it was the low interest that the Brazilian corporation had about the market on India. And I had the privilege of visiting India in the mission, in the presidential visit of Fernando Henrique Cardoso, and I was deeply impressed about the potential of Indian market. There is a say that to play tango, you need two. And from the Brazilian side, I remember very well the moment that were there. The Brazilian delegation was not prepared to deliver a good speech showing the opportunities of Brazil, while the Indians are much better prepared to talk about what they represent and what the potential of their market. And then it's quite interesting to see there is a change. I think all the Brazilians are realized that we have to go outside. We have to take opportunities outside. And the part of India, I think there is I like not to mention this, but it comes to my mind, there is a difference between the approach of investment between China and India. I think China comes to Brazil as a strategic investor, not someone that is going to take, results on the short term. And while India is mostly due to the difference in approach to investments, where the government is not the leading factor, it takes much more interest on short-term projects or medium-term projects. That's the difference. And I think from the point of view of presence, I think Brazil and India should enlarge much more their cooperation, because I think we see each other in a very distant way. And there is an advantage between our relations with India, because the domain of English is much more realistic in terms of our relation than with China. Then I think, as you mentioned, Ambassador mentioned, I think Marcos Trujillo, which all know very well, is a very active, intelligent, capable, very well informed. I think this is going to play a very important role. And this idea that we should work more together, we are very important part of BRICS. I think Ambassador André is also a very important factor. I'm very optimistic, and I spend the rest of the day very happy about this new undertaking about our relation. Thank you.
Very good, Roberto. We still have a few minutes. André, if you allow us, also Segovia and the other friends that are here, Deepak, we can see that our new ambassador of India in Brazil is with us. So we would like to invite our ambassador, Suresh Reddy, if he can also give some words, if it's possible. Can you connect him?
Yeah. Roberto, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
See and hear you.
Yeah. Thank you. Roberto, thank you so much for inviting me and for organizing this event. It's been really very fascinating discussion. Just quickly, I'll come to the point. I've been looking forward to working closely with you, with Admiral Sergio, with all our friends who are there on the screen. And I'm glad that at least I could now see them and hear them and get a sense of what everybody is looking for. And I fully join you in complimenting Ambassador Andre. In India, in our foreign office, he is known to be amongst the top 3 diplomats in India. I can tell you that, and he's an ambassador whom you should feel proud about, that he is representing your great country in India, because I know he's been a good friend of mine. But more importantly, his popularity is across the entire ministry, entire government of India. So my full compliments to you, to the Itamaraty, to the full team there. But I was very also happy to hear the discussion on the ethanol, because interestingly, yesterday I met one of our ministers who's been actively and personally involved in ethanol. And his instruction to me is to see how we could strengthen engagement in this ethanol on biofuels, as Sergio had correctly pointed out. And that is one of my focus areas. And you'll be happy to know that in another 10 minutes, I'm having another Zoom meeting with the company, which is focusing on ethanol and which is looking at investing and setting up a joint venture in Brazil. So they are waiting for me to connect with them. And after this meeting, I'm going to be connecting with them. And interestingly, you'll also be hearing this. After that meeting, I have another Zoom meeting with a group of companies which are looking to see putting up joint ventures in different sectors in Brazil, between Brazil and India. Some want to do in Brazil and some want to do in India with Brazilian companies. So you can just see, I mean, COVID or no COVID, but the bottom line is that the interest is quite strong between the two countries, between the private sector of the two countries, as it was correctly pointed out by Ambassador Rubens, and also Mr. Roberto, that the investments, the commercial decisions in India are taken by the private sector, not by the government. And that is the beauty of it. When they take a decision, they do stay committed to that decision because they believe it makes sense for them commercially. And that is the most sensible kind of decision in my view. And that enables the business to go forward. And with this, I'll only thank you. And I look forward to meeting all of you in person when I reach Brazil. I hope to be there on Sunday, as you say, with the flights taking off. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Suresh. Very good. I'm very glad that you could join us. Pity that our ambassador of Russia just left, and please, André, tell him that we tried to invite him at the end, but just at the moment that he left. Segovia and Deepak, we would like to have the last words of this meeting today, of course. You want to say something? Suresh?
Thank you, Roberto. I just want to say the time has come. Let's do it.
Ambassador Suresh was raising the hand, trying to say something else.
Yeah,
no?
Thank you. I also would like to acknowledge the presence of our good friend, the Russian ambassador. I was glad to see that he had joined us in the discussions. He has been a very important driving force on the BRICS initiatives and strengthening the BRICS cooperation. And he's also taken the lead in getting the ambassadors in Delhi and the Foreign Office together to work on BRICS-related areas. So I was very happy to see that he could join us today. And I would also like to thank Deepak for his vote of confidence in me. That makes my job that much more demanding and difficult. And of course, I was grateful and happy to have heard the statement made by the Brazilian president of NDB. I'm saying, Marcos, I'm saying the Brazilian president of NDB because NDB started actually in Fortaleza. So I believe Brazil is the mother of NDB. And now it is only fitting that we have a Brazilian as the president of NDB. And I look forward to working closely again with NDB also in taking forward our common ideas. Thank you.
Okay, Ambassador Suresh, thank you very much. Deepak, please.
Roberto, I just want to thank you again for this entire opportunity. And I want to say that the time has come and let's just start and make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak, very much for joining us. Also, Segovia.
Thank you, Roberto. I want to thank you again for everyone here. And I'm glad to see again Deepak Baglas, André, the ambassador André Corrêa do Lago, you remotely. And I take this opportunity to invite the Ambassador Suresh to visit Apex Brazil as soon as possible when he arrived Brazil. And I'm available for everyone here if you want to have a conversation about what we can do and what we can do more to strengthen this relationship between Brazil and India. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Segovia, thank you very much again. And as Marcos suggested, we should make more often those webinars. André, please, if you make your comments.
Just to thank for the trust that everybody is having on the job of my team and myself here in Delhi. Reiterate how happy I am that Suresh is the ambassador to Brazil. Thank you, Roberto and Deepak and Segovia and Marcos for participating today. And as Ambassador Rubens Barbosa said, Now we're going to show results. Wait and see, they're coming.
Andrea, thank you. Thank you very much. One point I just want to mention at the end. One of the areas, Andrea, Deepak, Segovia knows because he met. We brought as the director of our chamber, Mr. Mauricio. He is president of an association that is involved in sports in a big way. Anything regarding macro sports, not only selling a soccer player, but to make a stadium, to make a rebuild a stadium and modernize all the equipment. And he also is together with our Federation of Industries. That's why also we are working. So I want to point out that this is an area that we can make a lot of important developments. Segovia is having meeting with Mauricio and his team, and also is one of the areas that I believe we can do a bigger development. And just for the team of Marcos Torrijos that I believe is still may be there, in November, we are expecting that be presential meeting in China. Exactly this involvement as that this gentleman is doing involves the whole world. It was missing India, and for a long time I was trying. Even we brought years ago a team of São Paulo soccer team to play a tournament in India, sponsored by Tata Group. You know, some companies in India like Tata, like Cesar Goa, they have schools of soccer, but they are not until the professional. But is organized, very well organized, the Federation of Soccer in India. Anyhow, as I say, it's not only soccer. We're speaking in a bigger way. So just wanted to point out and also to thank all your teams, André, Segovia, Deepak, Marcos Torrijos, and we were very glad at the end we could have also the presence of our ambassador, Suresh, as well as our good friend and very active also, Rubens Barbosa, and my colleague, Roberto Teixeira da Costa. So if any of you wants to make any final comment, we may just say goodbye. Any final comment?
Thank you, Roberto. Goodbye. Thank you.
To say something? Yes. Yes, Deepak.
I was just thanking everyone and I was saying we'll catch up again soon. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much, all of you. We had many of our also colleagues, chambers. We do a very strong, closer relation, not only all the chambers of commerce, but associations here in São Paulo, spread to where the arms of our chamber is in Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Catarina, Paraná, North Brazil, mainly through the federations of industries and also commercial associations. But we make a very strong also work close to the Commonwealth chambers, because we have the Commonwealth Games, we have the Commonwealth is still very close. So our friends of all the associations and federations that also we have in India, MOU with them. So we thank all of you for joining us. And again, André, Segovia, Deepak, and Marcos Torrijos for accepting and joining and having this early meeting in Brazil. Many people woke even Segovia was saying woke 5 o'clock in the morning, but I think was worthwhile to all of us. Thank you very much.